Formula One's calendar is receiving interesting updates, as there are several circuits that are pushing to make a comeback from 2027 onward. Some of them are financially stable enough to commit to this project, whereas for others the burden is too big. But one thing is for sure, if these tracks make a comeback, some will have to drop out. So which circuits are we most likely going to see again? And which ones would we have to fall on the sword for this to happen? With a calendar of 24 races, there is only so much the sport could do. Of course, the drivers aren't robots, and they cannot race in 30 events in a year, as they've already expressed their worries about the massive growth of the calendar, reaching the record of 24 races in a year for the second consecutive season. But on the other hand, just because certain tracks are ready to make a comeback, it doesn't mean that the calendar will grow. There could be replacements, as some of the current circuits are already standing on thin ice with foam. For starters, we need to be looking at the Turkey Grand Prix. The Istanbul Park hosted some of the most legendary races that we've witnessed, with the last one being held back in 2021. The Turkish Automobile Sports Federation, the body that is now in charge of the Istanbul Park, confirmed that they would love to see F1 back in Turkey on a permanent basis and not on a short-term deal. The president of the federation, Eren Yücel Topragi, went on to express how much this project would mean to the motorsport world of his country, as he elaborated. Following our appointment by the government as the federation a few months ago, we have been in intensive discussions with F1 and FIA management. There is a strong commitment from the government to bring Turkey back into the Formula One calendar with a permanent and long-term agreement. As is known, the 2026 calendar has already been announced. Nevertheless, in the event that a race cannot be held for various reasons, we could host the Turkish GP. However, unlike during the pandemic, we do not want to host a one-off replacement race. Instead, we aim to secure a place on the calendar through a long-term contract. You could understand where this wish comes from. The last time that Turkey had a GP, the sport was at its peak in terms of competitiveness between two protagonists from different teams, and it hasn't stopped growing since then. So, if they were to make a return now, the profits would be through the roof. The organizers are ready, sponsorships have been prepared, everything seems to be on track for Turkey to return to Formula One, but there is one big obstacle. The FIA needs to make a place by kicking some other races from the calendar. We've seen how the Madrid GP ultimately meant the end of Imola, which was a track that already had its troubles keeping up financially with the rest of the events. You just cannot help but wonder, has Formula One become a sport in which there are massive financial battles in the background as to which track has better support from the organizers? That wouldn't be bad for business. However, we need to keep in mind that the F1 drivers prefer to race on traditional circuits, which Turkey most definitely is. But apart from the Istanbul Park, we need to be talking about Portimão as well. The track that also held its last event back in 2021 has been in advanced talks to make a return to the sport in 2027 under the same circumstances as the Turkey GP on a long-term deal. That's not really something that should be discussed now, because we've seen contracts being extended until 2040, such as the Miami GP, and the belief that Formula One will only continue to grow seems to be instilled in everyone who invests in this sport. The Prime Minister of Portugal, Luís Montenegro, confirmed that the country has everything ready to formalize the return of Formula One to the Algarve circuit near Portimão. Elaborating further on this, Montenegro said, "One of the circumstances that most contributes to promoting this region is major events. We have secured the MotoGP, the world's premier motorcycling event, for 2025 and 2026. And I can tell you that we have everything ready to formalize the return of Formula One to the Algarve next year in 2027. These events require some financial effort on the part of the government, but they have a direct financial return and an indirect promotional return that are quite frankly well worth it. We need to be talking about which circuits are most likely going to be dropped out of Formula One if we see a return of the Turkish GP or Portimão. A race that is already having trouble keeping itself on the calendar as things stand right now is Catalunya, especially with the entrance of the Madrid GP from 2026 onwards. The Spanish government said that it would be very difficult to have two circuits in the same year, as financially it would represent a massive challenge to be profitable from this branch, although Italy seemed to do just fine for a very long period of time. Barcelona is a circuit that has been used for pre-season testing due to its mixed nature. It has all types of corners and a long straight that gives your car everything you need in order to understand whether it would perform well or not throughout the season. A loss of this track would be a massive hit for the calendar. But then again, let's not forget about the Belgian GP as well. Just because it has a contract for 4 out of the 6 years until 2031, it doesn't mean it's secure. Quite the contrary. The rotational basis in 2028 and 2030 goes to show that we are highly likely going to see some other races being promoted, and those races could very well take the throne from one of the most legendary circuits in the history of the sport. With all this being said, the growth of phone is unavoidable, and while changes are good, we need to keep one thing in mind. We are here to watch traditional, action-packed races, not go around in tight circles in big cities. That's why even Monaco is not as secure as it would want to be, because apart from the prestigious part, the organizers are struggling to keep the momentum and the excitement around one of the oldest circuits on the grid. Which tracks do you think are most likely to make a comeback in phone? And more importantly, which ones would be dropped? Let us know in the comments below. And once you do that, make sure to click on the video that appears on your screen right now.